Peace and blessings to all y'all out there listening. Once again, this is Yusuf Beta Fourth with Time's Up Ministries and Your Freedom and Justice Movement. Now, I want to use this time to inform you on just what Your Freedom and Justice Movement is and how it ties into Time's Up and the fall of America. First, we must understand that there are two forces in play today: the forces of God and the forces of Satan. These two being represented through the physical manifestation of human beings and global institutions. Satan and his forces manifest evil, deception, war, injustice, and death, while the forces of God manifest good, righteousness, truth, peace, and life. Now these two forces are now colliding, for the time is up for one, and the time is just beginning for the other. Your Freedom and Justice Movement is a divine organization called upon in this hour of judgment and global transition to unify all those of goodwill from all nations and races throughout the world to bring an end to the global rule of white supremacy. We are called upon by the forces of God to identify, expose, and remove all sources which hinder the evolution of humanity and the world order God Almighty intends to bring in. Our mission is to bring an end to the elite rule of the 1% and its destructive policies of war over all non-whites in this country and around the world, specifically God's chosen people, the black nation in America. Now, in order to solve any problem, we must first acknowledge the problem exists. America in its Constitution was never established with the needs and aspirations of non-whites in mind. So common sense tells us that surely it wasn't established with their 400-year-old slaves in mind. And this is why every chance these racist leaders and politicians get to fuck over black people, they do. Whether it be during the Civil War or the Reconstruction period, during the Jim Crow era or the Civil Rights Movement, during the war on drugs, which has led to mass incarceration of blacks and people of color. We know who the enemy is. My generations won't be fooled or pacified. Fear has always been our people's worst enemy. But today, this fear is being removed and replaced by courage, boldness, and fear of God. America has prided herself because of her diverse nature and multicultural quality. However, when such diversity is not reflected by the government, you open the door for discrimination and mistreatment upon some at the hands of others. Now, every nation and people have the human right to self-determination and the God-given right to determine their own course and path. The black man and woman in America was never given that chance. Now let's check out the diversity, or the lack of, in the governing body of America. Presently, America's ruling body is 80% white, particularly made up of old white men, who just make up 62% of the U.S. population itself. Now, how can we, as an oppressed people and politically suppressed class of people, ever hope to receive justice and prosperity from a governing body whose very principles and ideology runs counter to the needs and desires of our people? Not only do the enemy control what laws are created, they also control who enforces those laws and upon whom. Now, it is against both nature and divine law for one predominant racial ethnic group to rule over another, particularly one with an historic track record of enslavement and systemic terrorism upon one. Now, we must understand that as whites draw closer to becoming the minority in America, the more desperate they'll become and the more diabolical their plans for extermination of blacks and minorities will be. For too long, we have been the victim of abuse, economic exploitation, experimentation, police brutality, and the unjust practices within this country's so-called justice system. We are tired of being placed in disastrous living conditions, inferior schools, and without the proper means to take care of ourselves and families, while the elite 1% class control 80% of the planet's wealth and resources. But a bright new age has begun, and the dark age is passing. The people are rising into the consciousness of who they are, and God Almighty has declared that as long as we the people remain asleep, the enemy will remain awake. God Almighty has declared that when we the people rise, the enemy will fall. I leave you as I came in the divine greetings and peace and blessings.